All right, we are back here on the podcast, getting ready for some March Madness coverage here. We are down from 68 teams to 16. We are getting one step closer to crowning our national champion. With you as always, you've seen him on the Carton Show, on the researchers there. Great college basketball contributor, Troy Mauriello is here with us. Troy, how are you?
I'm all right, Mike. Just spent the last 4 days watching college hoops, so couldn't be better. And I'm waiting for Thursday to come around.
Well, six, so you got the first four games.
Yeah, true. Even Tuesday and Wednesday. You're right.
Yeah, so a lot of basketball here. I got to go to Brooklyn here. I'm rocking the March Madness shirt here.
Nice, nice.
Has all
Love
the
it.
logos of the teams on here. Two of these teams are still dancing. The other six got sent home. But
Mhm.
general thoughts on what we saw so far from the tournament.
I mean, I there wasn't really any major upsets outside of the Oakland over Kentucky. Obviously, you had NC State kind of make that, I guess you could say, Cinderella run, although they've been playing like a top 25 team over the past 2 weeks. They're really the only high, double digit seed that's made this type of run. We've seen every one and every two seed make it through. Personally, I don't like mind it because now we get some awesome games in the Sweet 16. I mean, you look at these matchups in the Sweet 16 and then these potential matchups in the Elite Eight, you truly are going to see the top, 10 to 15 teams in the country. I mean, obviously, would it be nice to maybe have, one or two other of these, double digit Cinderella type teams? Yes. But at the end of the day, I think that we saw this weekend maybe this season of college basketball was a little more top heavy than we realized, and there truly were these like 10 national title contenders, and everyone else was kind of further apart from them than we thought, and that's kind of, I think, what's led to what we've seen now. But again, I'm okay with that. I like seeing these awesome matchups now. Sure, it was not totally exciting. It wasn't the most fun. There was only a handful really of games that came down to the final possession. We talked about that off air, but at the end of the day, it leads to some awesome Sweet 16 and Elite Eight and hopefully Final Four matchups. So it's a trade off there.
Yeah, for me, I feel like the first round was fine. I think we peaked about like 650 on Friday night when you had like down the wire finishes of the Florida Colorado game and the Auburn Yale game, like basically ending in second of each other with the upsets. And after
Hmm.
that, sort of really like the quality of play sort of went downhill fast because like obviously I was in the building at Barclays Friday night. We had a lot of fun with JMU. They didn't show up against Duke on Sunday. Didn't do
Hmm.
well. Like the underdog basically got wiped off the floor here, and like it's crazy because like apart from like the two late night games, the Oregon game and the Houston Texas A&M game on Sunday night,
Hmm.
you're like the second round is just not competitive.
Second round was rough. I got a stat for you right here, Mike. Over the first two rounds, so this is the well, I guess the first three rounds, the first four, the first round, and the second round, games were decided by 15.4 points. That's the highest since 1993. So over 30 years that we've gone since games were this, large blowouts basically through the first couple rounds. Obviously, that's a little bit inflated with the Purdue blowout of Utah State, the Duke blowout of JMU, of course, but there just weren't that many great games, especially like you said in the second round. I mean, you had the two late night games. Marquette, Colorado was an awesome game yesterday as well. I don't want to sell that one short, but outside of that, a lot of blowouts. And I think what hurt the viewing experience a little bit too were the blowouts in the standalone windows. Like
Yes.
you had early yesterday. Well, early yesterday was a great game, obviously, but then you had at 250 or the 240 window, whatever it was, Purdue blowing out Utah State, then Duke blowing out JMU. I mean, you really went from like 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock yesterday without watching any competitive basketball. And it even happened a little bit on Saturday as well with Gonzaga. That game obviously was close at least for a half, but then blowing out Kansas again. When you have these blowouts in the standalone windows, it really, really hurts because then you're sitting through a halftime, you're sitting through a whole second half that's a blowout. You've got sometimes a whole break until the next game, and then you've got to get to the next one. So you're sitting there for like 2.5 hours not watching competitive basketball. I think that really hurt as well. I understand why they do it with the TV contracts and everything, but those standalone games going into starting the second weekend, especially on Sunday, it really kind of kills the viewing experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you were somebody who like needs to touch some grass here, those standalone was actually perfect for you because like you had like 3 hours outside, like you could read a book, you could like do some laundry, you could like take a break from the basketball, not miss a thing.
Uh, well, Saturday here on the East Coast, it was raining all day. There's nothing to do outside. I'm sitting there, and I got the Gonzaga Kansas game. I was like, okay, at least we got a good game here. and then it turns into a blowout. I got nowhere to go. I got nothing else to watch. I just got to sit there and watch this game. Again, I understand why they do it, but again, like especially on Sunday, I wish they would not stack all these like 5 games at 7 o'clock or later. People got to work the next day. People can't be staying up to watch, Houston, Texas A&M at 1 o'clock in the morning. I wish that they would maybe move some of those games into like the late afternoon window because people are home on Sundays watching these games. So that's my one big complaint about the scheduling.
They got the poor Yale fans who had to wait till like 10:15 on Sunday night to see their second round game tip off.
Yeah, yeah, and then you're getting blown out too. You're staying up till 11:30 midnight on a Sunday night. Seeing your team get crushed. It just it's a tough situation, of course.
Yeah, let's talk real quick before we get into the specifics here. Some of the non-tournament headlines that have been happening around college basketball here. And number one here, can we talk about how ridiculous it is that the transfer portal opened like the day after selection Sunday here? Like this is like leading to like insane outcomes here where we have like teams skipping the NIT to
Hmm.
go portal hunting. We have all this attention on guys entering the portal, leaving the portal. I mean, poor Iona had every single scholarship player on the roster enter the
Yeah.
portal. Like
Hmm.
can we wait 2 weeks? Can we wait till the final four set before we do this?
Yeah, it's the most obvious solution, and I hope that they make that change. Going forward, it's like I saw someone say it's like the NBA, starting free agency midway through the playoffs, or the NFL doing the same thing. Like it would never make sense for those of these. Why are we doing that now? This is basically free agency when you think about it in college sports. So we're starting free agency while 64, 32, 16 teams are still playing, and it just doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. Like you said, it's causing teams to skip out on other postseason opportunities because they got to get to the work on the portal. I'm a St. John's fan, as you know. They skip out on the NIT. Obviously, the NIT wasn't going to do much for them. Would I like to see them play more games as a fan? Absolutely, but I understand the decision to not play in the NIT just because you got to get to work on the portal. It's time to now rebuild your roster for next year and playing 2 or 3 extra games and extending the season by 2 or 3 extra weeks might take away from the chances that you get to figure out who's going to be on your roster for next year, what guys are leaving, what guys can you bring in. So it's taking away postseason opportunities from these teams because they just can't do it, and it's making teams in the field of 68 have to recruit while they're playing games. It's a mess. I think it was Alabama landed a transfer while before their first round game. It's like, what are we doing? You got a kid on NC State transferring before the tournament started. It's absolute lunacy.
Yeah, to me, it's like the same stupidity too as like the NFL system where you have like the coordinators interviewing for head coaching jobs while their team's still in the playoffs here. It makes no sense. I mean, like we really need like something to staff worry about getting the guy out of the portal and then trying to get ready for a first round game.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Push it back, like you said, push it back to the Final Four weekend. That's totally fine. At that point, majority of the teams are now into their off season. That's fine. The 4 teams that are in the Final Four will live, not being a week behind on everyone else. I think they'll take that trade off playing in a Final Four. Yeah, push it back like 2 weeks, and then everything is solved. It's really not that hard to do. So hopefully that's a change that's made in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it led to the NIT sort of chaos here where like we before the year, I know I complained like about this big time about how we sort of stacked the deck for we have to get power conferences in here so we can counter this whatever tournament
Hmm.
that Fox Sports is playing to be bringing all these Big East and Big Ten teams afterwards, and then
Hmm.
everybody doesn't want to basically go. I mean, the Pac-12 like basically gave each of the Power Six conferences 2 automatic bids. Pac-12 couldn't even fill it because 17 said no.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just, I mean, the allure of the NIT has obviously taken a nosedive in the past, I would say even 5 years, not even going to the Garden now. You go to Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indiana. If you make the Final Four, I just don't know if that's much of a draw. And like I said before, these teams, I think these coaches would rather get a jump on recruiting than playing what they think are kind of meaningless games. And especially if you're a team that kind of just missed out on the field, my team being a perfect example of that. I'm not really sure what you're going to get out of the NIT. If you make a run in the NIT, does it make you feel better that you ended the season in the NIT semifinals or the NIT finals? I'm not really sure. So the allure of the NIT just is not there. Again, you're not finishing it at the Garden. So I understand why some of these teams turn it down. Other ones, it's like, would a few more games really kill you? But again, the mentality of these coaches is, why am I coaching these games that aren't going to matter? I got to figure out my roster for next year so that I can get back in a position where I can be playing in the field of 68 and not turning down an NIT invite.
Yeah, plus I know in the past there's this argument, oh, like if you have a young team, the NIT is valuable because you can,
Mhm.
make your grow as scorer. It doesn't matter because like if you finish the NIT, three guys on that team just go in the portal, look for somewhere better.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Again, 5 years ago, sure, if you had a team of mostly, underclassmen, you're trying to build something, you're trying to get postseason tournament experience, sure, play in the NIT, play a couple of games, see how your team responds, and then build something for next year. Again, you could do that this year. You got two or three freshmen, they're gone. You're bringing in new guys. Your whole roster turns over. It doesn't matter. That's the last time that these guys are going to play together. So yeah, that's a great point as well.
Plus, I mean, even for teams that did make the did take the NIT invitation, we saw like Providence, I think like Carter didn't even play because like he was sitting out evaluating his options.
Yeah, exactly. So, you're not even getting the best of these teams. Providence was the perfect example, losing to Boston College. You could tell that they weren't really there. Even Seton Hall, who's now advanced a couple of rounds in the NIT, the first like 35 minutes of their game against St. Joe's, they looked like they didn't want to be there. It's tough. I'm sure it's tough for these kids to get up and playing a game that they think doesn't really matter after having the heartbreak of missing out, being one of the first, 10 teams missing out on the NCAA tournament. I'm sure it's tough for them to get up as well. So I completely understand why teams are turning it down. I wish again maybe pushing the portal back a little bit helps solve a little bit of that at least.
Yeah, and we'll quickly hit the coaching carousel. We have two big ones so far here. Dusty May spurns Louisville and goes to Michigan. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I was shocked because it seemed like he was a lock to go to Louisville. I'm curious to see where they turn now in their search, but I like the fit of Michigan. I mean, you look at this guy was able to turn around FAU, really did an amazing job over these past two years. Taking them all the way to the Final Four last year, a program that with the resources that they have, the job that he did there is incredible. Now he goes to Michigan, obviously with unlimited resources. But I think that the interesting thing is, how is he going to be able to, or maybe he's a better fit for a team that football is first. Football is always going to be first at Michigan. Can he, will he be able to adapt to a school that basketball is kind of on the back burner? Obviously, the resources are there, but that's a football school. Maybe Jawan Howard struggled with that a little bit. I'm curious to see how Dusty May does, but I like the hire. You can't complain about hiring a guy who completely, revolutionized what his previous school was doing. So I can't have anything bad to say about it right now.
Yeah, that's one hire. One that broke like right before we recorded here. That we had Mark Byington from James Madison took the Vanderbilt job.
hmm Yeah, again, I mean, and kind of a similar, almost identical situation to Michigan, right? You had a former player go leaving Vandy, hiring this kind of up and coming coach who led a mid major on a season that they'll never forget at JMU. Again, you can't say anything bad about it right now. I mean, if you're a Vanderbilt fan, you've got a real college basketball coach in there, so I would say the future is bright for him as well.
Yeah, and the other one that was notable here is that great hire West Virginia getting Darian DeVries from Drake. He's done a great job there. He's bringing his son Tucker with him to Morgantown here. So you figure that the Mountaineers will be right back in the mix next year for a potential at-large bid with that.
Yeah, it was such a weird offseason for them, obviously with the Huggins departures. I mean, that's a program that doesn't stay down for too long. So yeah, absolutely. I could see them turning it around very, very quickly with that hire. And that's a program that usually makes the right well, not makes the right hire, but usually makes the right decisions. And I would say it's gonna be a quick turnaround, an easy turnaround for them as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's some stuff we'll keep an eye on here. There's more big names on the board, but we'll keep going back to the tournament here, the actual games here. So we'll get some headlines here. So go chronologically here. Virginia in the first four, playing complete egg, where
hmm
Charles McClellan's in course having to watch it was great.
Yeah, I mean, with Virginia, it's a lot of people did not think that me included, did not think they were an NCAA tournament team, and they proved everyone right. I mean, that was a performance that is a real egg on the face of the committee. Letting that team in, that team, no one really had them anywhere near the bubble, to be honest with you. Entering Selection Sunday, and they go out and they lay an absolute egg offensively. They get blown out by Colorado State, and again, that's a Virginia team. Great program, great coach. This year, they should not have been in the NCAA tournament. You could have named five or six teams probably that were more deserving of going to that game than Virginia was. I mean, and thinking of the fan bases, like I'm a big St. John's fan, as you know. I had to turn that game off because I was getting too frustrated watching this Virginia team try to score and saying, man, they picked Virginia over St. John's. And I'm one of, again, 5 or 6. Think about how Indiana State felt. Think about how Seton Hall felt, Oklahoma, Pitt. Like these teams got to be furious watching that Virginia performance, saying, man, they put these guys in over us. At the very least, those teams would have played a more competitive and entertaining game, where you're not watching a team go scoreless for almost an hour of real time. Like those teams would have at least played an entertaining game or a more entertaining game than Virginia would have.
Yeah, and as somebody who's worked in production, you could tell the production crew was not happy having to watch that game because like the fact they actually put on this, I gotta grab it here. Virginia's first point scored says 9:48 p.m. Eastern time. It's like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, they're not happy with having to watch that.
Exactly. And that's why, like, sometimes, like, let's just use our heads. Let's just use the eye test. Like the eye test sometimes can work in your favor. And I'm not just saying that because of St. John's, but Virginia is not an entertaining team to watch. No one outside of Virginia fans and alums want to watch Virginia in an NCAA tournament game this year. It's not going to be an entertaining product. Put your most entertaining product out there. I would have loved to see Seton Hall play Colorado State or Indiana State and that team into the NCAA tournament. That would have been awesome. Of course, my team getting into the NCAA tournament would have been great. Sometimes just think about the entertainment value. Just think about what team is going to play the most entertaining game, and use the eye test, and then it'll work out for you. So,
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's get into obviously the upset of the week. We had some big ones. We got some interesting ones at the lower seeds on Thursday. We had Duquesne, both upset BYU. We had some the Yale crazies on Friday we'll get to here, but Oakland over Kentucky's here into the first round here with Jack Gulke, who plays D2 for 5 years, transfers to D1 as a grad student, hits 10 threes, gives the MJ shrug to the CBS cameras. It's great stuff here. And this was wild watching this play out and seeing like Kentucky again flame out in a big spot in the NCAA tournament.
yeah, and for Kentucky, I mean, the question marks now start obviously with Cal's future there. And the question mark for me is, do you want to send guys to the NBA or do you want to be, a program that wins titles? Because at this point now, you've been a program for years that has obviously, been very, very good at sending talent to the NBA, at finding talent, at coaching talent, but at the end of the day, you're not winning NCAA tournament games. You're losing to double digit seeds year after year. And the interesting thing to note about that game is, who are Kentucky's best two players in that game? Antonio Reeves and Trey Mitchell, two of their upperclassmen. Their freshmen did not deliver. And I think at the end of the day, you're seeing year after year, freshmen don't deliver. It's so hard to win 6 games in a tournament setting with a team that's built on mostly underclassmen and freshmen. And it's shown year after year. So does Kentucky want to keep sending, these one and done kids to the NBA, or do they want to win championships? That's kind of the answer that they need to figure out.
Yeah, I know Cal said something about this. He's like, it's like my job to make sure these guys are ready for the next level here. It's like, yeah, but couldn't you do that with the 20-year-old? They help the 20-year-old get ready for a pro career somewhere.
Yeah, like isn't that every coach's job, but also to win games in March? Like that's also your job. It's kind of a two-pronged approach. Like you're not just making sure these guys are ready for the next level, you're also trying to win on this level. And the past 5 to 10 years, that just hasn't happened.
Yeah, and we talked about the coaching carousel before. If they decide to part with Cal, and again, we don't know what his contract situation is, whether there's offset language in there, they dip into the endowment to get rid of him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if that opens up Kentucky, like everything changes for the whole landscape of the sport because like that's one of the 5 jobs. Like, if it opens, like everybody wants to go for it.
Exactly. Yeah, that is going to absolutely, be a game changer. Who knows where they would go? You brought up to me about Patino. That is probably the one school that I'm like, would he consider going back there from St. John's to Kentucky? Like the possibilities of the Kentucky job would be endless. Obviously, who knows what would happen with Louisville then? That'd be so interesting seeing both of those open at the same time. So at this point now, I guess it's a little bit less likely. It's been a couple of days. I know that he's speaking tonight, so I guess we'll see what happens there. But yeah, if that job opens up, the carousel could go absolutely crazy here in terms of having that job open and then seeing because then another high major job is going to open as well. So very very interesting to see what happens there.
And remember, I know this is something St. John fans don't want to hear. Rick Pitino has always said his biggest regret in his career is leaving Kentucky to go back to the NBA. So
Exactly. That's the only job where I'm like let's hope for our sake that Cal just stays there, and we don't even have to worry about it.
yeah, for sure. Here, let's get to I think the other big headline here. These fantastic finishes. We've got some of these games here. The two on Friday with Yale, with the Yale Auburn game, the Colorado Florida game with the big shot making from KJ Simpson and former Iona transfer Walter Clayton down at the Gators.
Hmm.
You had those going back to back here. You had the crazy end to the Houston A&M game. The Oregon Creighton game was nuts here. Those four finishes, they were definitely one of the highlights of the week.
Yeah, that Oregon Crane game was just unbelievable. What was it? Jermaine Cuisinart on Oregon just played crazy out of his mind. And you talk about that Creighton team, man. They got some scores as well. What an entertaining game that was. I thought the best game of the weekend was probably the Colorado Florida game. You talk about Colorado doing everything they could to give that game away, and then ending up hitting the shot at the end. Walter Clayton, Iona kid, just went absolutely crazy as well in that one. So, like you said, the tournament probably peaked at that point with the Yale over Auburn, and then you had the crazy Colorado game, and then obviously you didn't get a whole lot. But on Saturday night, that Oregon Creighton game was phenomenal, and Colorado playing two very entertaining games as well against Marquette. That game, Colorado, man, they just could not break through against Marquette. They kept, falling behind by about 5 or 6, then coming back and tying it, and just couldn't get that push to take the lead and maybe extend the lead a little bit. Had a couple of open good looks at the end of that game as well. They did not go down from their best players. So tough end for Colorado, but they played by far or two of the most entertaining games in the tournament.
For sure. Let's go around the conferences here. Some stuff that's happened here that like who did well, who didn't. We have to start with our friend Greg Sankey, the SEC, because they were sent 8 teams to the field, which is to tie with the Big 12 for the most. Only 2 of them are still alive here. We saw 5 go out the first round here. We saw
Hmm.
another go out last night, the Texas A&M game here. So SEC flame out feels very well deserved considering how hard Sankey's trying to like tear his tournament apart for more money.
Yeah, exactly. It's just perfect karma. You had a couple of SEC teams obviously go down, and now you lose almost all of your teams going into the second weekend. It's perfect karma. I love it. The Big 12 as well. Really not that impressive of a showing out of them. They lose a good number of their teams as well. So maybe these conferences were. It's hard to make complete these massive statements about these conferences based on a single elimination tournament. But at the end of the day, when you're the Big 12 and you were looked at as this number one conference, and the SEC as well looked at as one of the top 2 or 3 conferences in the country, a lot of those teams let you down, and especially the SEC's case. When you had Auburn, who a lot of people had as maybe a sleeper Final Four pick going down. Kentucky, a lot of people had them as a Final Four, maybe even national champion team. They go down as well. It's just a bad look on your conference when the top teams in your conference don't deliver. Losing those teams that are in the 8-9 type game or the 7-10 type game is one thing, but losing the top teams in your conference, that really hurts because obviously those are teams that are losing to seeds that they should not be losing to.
Yeah, it defends the Big 12. Yeah, the Big 12 does have their top 2 teams still in it in Iowa
Hmm.
and Houston, but
Hmm.
it makes you wonder here with these conferences that are getting so many teams in here, you're killing yourselves too much in league play where you have nothing left by the time you get to the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. And in some cases, are we giving some of these teams a little too much credit just for playing in these conferences? That's the question that's going to be asked as well. Fair or not, I feel like that's going to be a question that's asked, and I've seen it thrown around. Oh, the Big 12 got too many bids. SEC got too many bids. Are when you see a performance like that at these conferences, the questions are asked. Are we giving teams too much credit just for playing in these tough leagues? And giving them bids that maybe should be going to mid-major schools or teams like that.
Yeah, I want to separate the Mountain West here because they're a separate animal here. Because I feel like
Yeah.
big talking point on Twitter over the weekend is, oh, the Mountain West is overrated again. They got just one team through. Like San Diego State
Hmm.
got one in the Sweet 16. And we saw Colorado State do nothing when they got out of the first 4. Boise State couldn't get out of the first 4. I think only 2 teams. I think they had the big collapse in Nevada here.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
think the big issue I have with them is not so much that they got so many teams in here, but I think a lot of these teams were better than their seeds. They got put in worse matches than they should have been by the committee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they got underseeded across the board when you look at the Mountain West. Basically you could argue every team outside of maybe San Diego State was a little bit underseeded. The problem with the Mountain West, and this is another one where, fair or not, when you send six teams and you only get one through to the second weekend and the other five, kind of embarrass themselves, or at least, varying levels of embarrassing themselves, fair or not, that's going to lead to the social media discourse of, this league did not deserve it. This league should never get six bids again. This is a one bid or two bid league going forward, just fair or not. I mean, and again, you talk about the flameouts. Colorado State, obviously having that brutal first half performance against Texas. You had Nevada blowing that big lead. You had Utah State getting absolutely crushed by Purdue. I know Purdue's one of the best teams in the country, but still on national TV in a standalone game, getting killed in that scenario. Boise State not making it out of the first round. So you had these teams that not only did they lose, but they lost in these kind of headline grabbing ways that, if you're trying to push that agenda of the Mountain West did not deserve these six bids, and the Mountain West, is a one bid or two bid league or three bid max league. If you're trying to push that agenda, you now have this tangible evidence to kind of grasp onto, fair or not, because again, they were underseeded, absolutely. But that discourse is now going to be out there just because of the way that this conference formed, and especially sending San Diego State, who's kind of been, the premier team of that conference for the last decade or two decades. They're them being the only one that gets through, and then not being one of these teams that kind of isn't there, or one of these surprise teams like a Nevada or a Boise State that was able to push through. That hurts them, and again, the discourse is not going to be pretty for the Mountain West. Fair or not, it's not going to be pretty.
You even mentioned New Mexico here, who basically got boat raced by
Yeah, that too. Mhm.
that stunk down the stretch.
Exactly. Yeah, and that, you had basically five teams, and again, varying levels, but all of them kind of have different levels of embarrassment. In the way that they lost, that's going to hurt you. Just your perception as a conference. Again, it's hard to really sum up in a conference's entire season in a single elimination tournament. But when you have five teams losing the way that they did, it's going to hurt, and people again are they're looking to push that agenda. They have clear now evidence that they can do so.
Speaking of trying to push an agenda here, we have to talk about our friends from the ACC, who once again, I mean, aside from Virginia, all four teams that made them around the 64, all advanced to the Sweet 16s. They had the most teams in the Sweet 16 of any conference here. We're getting this thread again. Oh, the ACC did well against the Big 12 in the regular season. Like, we should have gotten more teams in than we did. And like, guys, your league stunk for the most part here. Like, maybe you guys got a break and you didn't play a ton of tough teams and you guys are fresher for March. Some of these other teams are, but again, like as you said, small sample size not mean that the AC is better than it was this year.
Exactly, and we're in lockstep in this one. The ACC was a top heavy league all year long. We knew that Virginia was kind of fraudulent, but North Carolina we looked at as a national title all year long. No one's surprised that North Carolina is through to the second weekend. Duke is another team that yeah, they had their ups and downs, but I don't think anyone is shocked that Duke is playing in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Clemson is a team that has been in the top 15 at some point this season. Like, it's clearly been there for Clemson. It just hasn't come out enough throughout the year. And then NC State is playing right now on this hot streak. Like a team that is a top 15, top 25 team, and they obviously got a big break playing Oakland in the second round. So yeah, I don't think that this is some kind of discourse on the ACC of all Pitt and Wake Forest and Virginia deserve their bid and everything like that. Like, no, this was a pretty top heavy conference that has two teams that are we're not surprised at all that are in the second weekend. One team that is playing outstanding basketball and maybe got a very favorable matchup in NC State in the second round, and then a Clemson team that it's been there, like I said, throughout the season. It just hasn't come out enough. So I don't think it's that shocking that this team sent four to the Sweet 16. And I don't think it again. I don't think it's this grand statement about the ACC was underrated all year long. Like, no, they really weren't. If you look at the teams in that conference, I don't think they were at all.
Yeah, and the Clemson boy here. I mean, non-conference Clemson was very good. I mean, they've had win
Yeah.
Boise State, they won at Alabama, they beat South Carolina, they beat TCU, they beat you. I mean, they beat five tournament teams outside the league. I mean, like they just had
Mhm.
that dip in like January where they like forgot how to play basketball for a month, and then they sort of got back on track towards the end of the year.
Exactly, yeah, and I mean, I didn't see many people at all picking Clemson to make a run to the Sweet 16, so kudos to them, that's awesome, but it's clearly been there, and they clearly have a talented team, that, is a has maybe their ceiling be, a Sweet 16, top 15 type team, so it's not shocking to see that Clemson made this run, but at the end of the day, this is not a statement of all, you know, because Clemson made this run, that means that Pitt was better than we thought, or Wake Forest was better than we thought. Like, I don't think that that's the case.
Yeah. As the Big East guy, let's take the floor here. Big East here goes three bids, perfect 9-0s through the Sweet 16 here. We expected all three of them to be there for the most part here. Creighton gave you a scare against Oregon, but they hit the
Mhm.
big shots they needed to. UConn curb stomped Brooklyn to get to and more home games in Boston here. Marquette got Kolek back. He looked pretty good in his first two games here. So, what
Mhm.
do you think here about what we saw from the Big East this week?
Yeah, absolutely impressive from the Big East. I can't sound like a hypocrite because of what I just said about the ACC and say that the same doesn't necessarily apply to the Big East. When you look at the Big East, obviously it doesn't make this huge statement that the conference should have sent more teams in because the top three teams are rolling everyone. But at the end of the day, I am curious to see what the Big East does going forward now because if this conference does send three teams to the Elite Eight and maybe even three teams to the Final Four, then it's going to get really, really interesting in terms of the discourse on, how only three Big East teams got in. But again, I don't want to make some grand statement about the conference just based off of what the top teams in the conference are doing. But, you could argue three of the more impressive teams of the weekend were the three Big East teams. When you look at what Creighton did against Oregon, Marquette battling against Colorado, and then UConn just steamrolling everyone. I don't know how anyone beats UConn right now. Obviously, beating the 16 seed is one thing, but beating a Northwestern team that I thought Northwestern was going to give them a game. I thought Northwestern was boo booey. A senior laden team that has some experience in the tournament. I thought that they were going to give them a game, and that game was over within the first 10 minutes. Just kind of shows you how talented UConn is. It's going to be interesting to see now who they have to go through. Obviously, San Diego State first, and then if they win that game, who they end up getting in their second game between Illinois and Iowa State. But at the end of the day, it's UConn's tournament to lose, and we saw it this weekend.
Yeah, so looking ahead to the Sweet 16 here, we'll go to the
Yeah.
Thursday matchups first here with the West spot. Got the CBS for treatment here. First of all, can we point out here like how ridiculous it is that Arizona is playing at 7:09 and they're playing basically 5 o'clock Arizona time?
I know. Yeah, again, like the TV schedule, I don't fully understand it. Yeah, like why do you have and then like North Carolina, Alabama is the later game. What is the thought process behind that? It makes no sense to me that you're starting the two East Coast teams in a game that, by the way, is going to start after 10 o'clock because that's assuming that they play a perfect 2 hour game. That game's going to start well after 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and you have Arizona playing the 7 o'clock game. I guess it's like fit in already that those games have to start at those times. But could you not fix it to maybe have the two East Coast teams playing the earlier game? I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, especially because like as you said, 9:39 means 10:05 with the way the tournament runs.
Exactly. Yeah, these games never start at the time that they're supposed to start when they're the second game of a doubleheader. So we know that that game's going to start at after 10 o'clock. Means it's not going to end till after midnight on the East Coast. Means that anyone that is working having to work the following day, they're not going to be able to watch that game or at least the end of that game.
Yeah, let's also, I mean, take a look here. I mean, this West spot here, Clemson, Arizona, Alabama, North Carolina here. I think the games look nice on paper. I think you might be in for some blowouts though in these two games.
You could be, yeah. I mean, the entertainment value. I was actually looking at the North Carolina Alabama. I think the over under was like 172 or something. I mean, you're talking about entertainment value. That game has the potential to be an awesome up and down, high scoring game. We'll see if Alabama can hang with them. And then Arizona Clemson. Like I said, Clemson's been a team that has definitely overplayed what we thought they were going to be. I don't think anyone really thought they would be here. They're kind of that basically the only one of only two teams that's kind of the surprises that's made it this far. But could be two blowouts. But I'm really looking forward to that UNC Alabama game, to be honest with you, because that is going to be an up and down, high scoring game. Look at North Carolina's first two games; they score 90 and 85. Alabama has a low scoring game yesterday against Grand Canyon; they score 72. And in the first round, they dropped 109 on Charleston, and that Alabama Grand Canyon game it was a little bit sloppy, but maybe the most chaotic game of the first round with some of that. I think at some point the announcers even point out they were like, "This game is just pure chaos." Like that game, that North Carolina Alabama game has the potential to be a high scoring slugfest. It could be a blowout, of course, but at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to that game for sure.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Grand Canyon thing, I think it's funny. Charles Barkley said, I think during halftime, he's like, "Yeah, like does Grand Canyon actually run a play the entire game?"
Yeah, no one loved going like 1-on-4 more than Grand Canyon in that game. It was just like I don't even I think at some point I don't remember who was doing the games. One of the announcers was like, I don't think they see the defenders. Like they're just going to the basket. They could care less how many defenders are there. They're going to the basket. Again, chaotic game. And that's what you love about Alabama. They're gonna play these up and down high scoring games. So even if it's a blowout, it'll be like an NBA blowout where there's a lot of shot making and things like that.
Yeah, I think that was scary at that game though is that like we saw North Carolina flip the switch in the middle of the game against Michigan State when they were down early. They played up a notch on the defensive end here, and
Mm-hmm.
Alabama gave up 96 points to Charleston. That doesn't speak
Mm-hmm.
well for playing North Carolina.
Yeah, and that was a Michigan State team. I saw a stat that was one of the best in the country at not giving up, these big runs to opponents. I don't remember the exact stat, but one of the best teams in the country at not allowing opponents to go on these big runs. And UNC does exactly that to Michigan to completely turn that game on its head and take control. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if Alabama's defense does not improve, which at this point I don't know if it's going to, yeah, North Carolina is a pretty safe bet to score 80 to 90 points in this game. It's just can Alabama stay with them?
Yeah, let's go to the East region now. Here we have San Diego State and UConn here in the first game on TBS, which gets the UConn fans angry here that they have not been on CBS, I think, since the first round. And then we
Hmm.
have Illinois, Iowa State, the late game in Boston here. So what do you think about these two games here? I feel like the first game I feel like is trending towards blowout territory because San Diego State's
Hmm.
a rock fight, and then it's not
Hmm.
will just out push them here. But the late game has intrigue.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is UConn's region to lose, of course. It's not going to be easy. This game might be a little bit of a cakewalk, like you mentioned, because I just don't think San Diego State has the firepower to keep up with this UConn team. Like you said, they're going to try to turn it into a rock fight, and that's not going to work with UConn because UConn's going to hit their shots for sure. This game is played in Boston. I mean, it's going to be a 90, maybe not 90, but 75% UConn crowd. I mean, every GA ticket sold is going to be UConn, so that obviously works in their favor as well. But the later game, Illinois and Iowa State, I am really looking forward to that game. Illinois, another team, 85 points in their first game, 89 in their second round game against an Iowa State team that plays obviously this phenomenal defense. Iowa State's look really impressive through two games in the tournament. That's a clash of styles for sure. I'm actually looking forward to that because those two teams I think could really give UConn a game. I don't know if they're going to beat UConn, but either way, I think that we're getting a matchup in the Elite Eight that UConn can at least be challenged a little bit because like I don't want to see UConn just completely roll everyone on the way to the Final Four. So the winner of that game, at the very least, will give UConn a game. I would think.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go now to the Friday slate here. We'll go to, I think we'll start with it's like the Midwest, the South region got CBS. So it's NC State, Marquette, then Duke
Mm-hmm.
and Houston here, which is the late game here, the highlight game here, which is a little better 'cause it's Friday night and people will have to
Mm-hmm.
go to work the next day. But we've got these two games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, but still, like you're putting, your marquee game, which is Houston and Duke, at 9:39. Again, going to start after 10 o'clock. It's a Friday night, sure, but that game's going to start after 10 o'clock. That's maybe the most intriguing game from a television perspective of the Sweet 16, starting after 10 o'clock. But I think Duke is kind of playing with house money at this point now. This team's ceiling probably, if you would have asked any Duke fan, would have been a second weekend type team. So we'll see how far they can get now. Obviously, this is going to be their toughest challenge because at the end of the day, Marquette's a very good team, but they're not Houston. And NC State, Duke knows that they're not Houston. So a real opportunity for Duke. I saw the stat: Duke has not beaten a team that was higher seated higher than them since 1991 in the NCAA tournament. Insane stat. Duke has not basically beaten a higher seed than them for over 30 years in the NCAA tournament. They have a chance to do that here against a Houston team that has shown some, cracks. Obviously, needing overtime to get past Texas A&M. Duke's probably been the most impressive team of the first round. I saw people picking them to lose to Vermont in the first round, and they've rolled through them, and then obviously they rolled through James Madison like nothing. So Duke's been incredibly impressive through two games. Big opportunity for them, and then You talk about opportunity, Marquette. You're playing an 11 seed for a chance to go to the Elite Eight and be one win away from the Final Four. This is the benefit of having Kentucky knocked out is you get an NC State team, you get a couple of days to prepare for them. If you're Marquette, there's no excuse. Like you can't lose this game. This is the best team you'll have probably in a while. This is the best opportunity you're going to have in a while to get to that Elite Eight and to get one step away from the Final Four. So I'm excited to see how they respond to that.
Yeah, I think in terms of what I like in this region here, obviously, like NC State, I think you're hoping for Tyler Cole to tweak the oblique. I don't think they're going to keep up with them if they have to go up
Mhm.
and down the floor of Marquette. But the Duke game's intriguing here. We saw the Duke tease you their ceiling here against James Madison, where this is a team that basically waxed Wisconsin from the second they got on the floor, and they dominated that game from start here. And I think if
Mhm.
Kyle Filipowski, the upset's definitely in play because Houston has some depth issues.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. If you can get a lead on Houston and kind of control that game, it's gonna be tough for them to come back because, like you mentioned, they don't have a deep bench right now at all. They're not playing deep. They're so if you can kind of take a lead on them and control the game, it's gonna be tough for them to kind of force a comeback. So opportunity knocks. I think you talk about the opportunities. It's Marquette and it's Duke. Are they going to be able to deliver on the opportunity they've been given? In the second weekend.
All right, last region here, the Midwest region. That's the TBS one. We got Gonzaga and Purdue in Detroit on 7:30 on Friday night. Creighton, Tennessee's the late game, the most intact seating, I think, of any region outside of the
Mhm.
East. And I think these are two very fun games, especially Gonzaga saw Purdue and Maui this year. They played them close. They have an idea what they need to do, try and slow Edie down. And
Mhm.
Creighton, Tennessee, who the hell knows which version of each of these teams is going to show up?
Yeah, yeah. This is the best region of the weekend for sure, in my opinion. You get two awesome games. Purdue obviously looks amazing through two games. Just went absolutely through Utah State on Sunday, and Gonzaga. I know Duke was incredibly impressive as well. Gonzaga as well, maybe one of the most impressive teams of the first round. So many people picking McNeese to beat them. That game was such a blowout. I hardly even watched it. Because when you're in that first round window and you're kind of flipping around games. Usually you don't see the beginning of games, because you're watching the end of another game and you got the end of another game and then you turn this game on, maybe towards halftime. By the time you did that with the Gonzaga McNeese game, it was over. Like Gonzaga ran them off the floor. And then Kansas, what an impressive second half from Gonzaga. That game looked like it was going to be back and forth, a battle to the final buzzer. And Gonzaga just says, no way, we're going on this run to start the second half and we are going to blow you out of the gym. So Gonzaga playing outstanding basketball right now, and obviously Purdue is Purdue. Can't wait for that one. And like you mentioned, Creighton, Tennessee, what a matchup that is. Just two outstanding offensive teams. Some great players. Dalton Connect, obviously, and then you got Creighton, with Shireman and Kalkbrenner and Alexander. What a matchup that's going to be. They played some awesome games already in the second round, so really, really looking forward to that. And I just think this region is going to deliver with two awesome games and hopefully a third awesome game in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, intrigue here for me is two things. Number one, can Rick Barnes get the monkey off his back, get back to the Final Four? I don't think he can, but we'll. I don't think.
Mhm.
I think having one superstar scorer as opposed to three is a problem in that first game. And the other thing
Mhm.
here is we haven't seen Purdue get pushed yet in this tournament. Where we see
Yeah.
late in the regular season, saw the Big Ten tournament. When they get in these games, where they're tight down the stretch here, like they tend to tighten up. They tend to get away from things that got them these leads and. Gonzaga might be a team that could, give them a fight here down the stretch. You get to see if they have the mental guts to sort of get through all those games.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, if they can get through that, obviously could end up being a great thing for them. But yeah, like you said, if this game is a 5 point game or a 2 point game with 5 minutes to go, let's say, do they start kind of thinking of those emotions of FDU, or previous upsets that they've suffered years prior? And does that kind of get in their head? So we will see about that.
All right, here. So for last thing here, is your Final Four still intact on your bracket?
No, mine's blown up a long time ago. I had Kentucky going to the Final Four. I did a couple of different brackets. None of them are perfect. I don't think in terms of having a Final Four. I had St. Mary's in one of my Final Four. I tried to take a shot. In most of them, I have three at least, but no, I don't have any perfect ones.
I have three as well. I lost Kentucky. I had everything else still intact. So, uh,
Yeah, Kentucky took a lot of people out.
yeah. So let's go ahead here. Final Four picks here. What are you doing?
Oh, okay. So obviously, UConn's going through in the East. It's just I don't see anyone beating them, to be honest with you. In the South, I'll go with my Big East team. I'll go with Marquette. I think that they can get through NC State, and then who knows who they get in the Elite Eight. But I'll take Marquette. In the Midwest, I think it's Purdue's, to be honest. I really do. I think Gonzaga gives them a game, like we said, but I think that they get through. And I don't want to pick all one seeds, but I might have to. So I'm going to have to go with North Carolina. So I'll go with in the South. So I'll go with, or in the West, sorry. So I'll go with 3 1 seeds and Marquette the 2 seed. So I'll go a little bit chalky. I'll keep up the trend of the chalk so far in this tournament. And we've seen so far higher seeds have done fantastic. Favorites have done fantastic in this tournament so far. So I'll keep that up. I'll go with the 3 1 seeds and the 2 seed at Marquette.
We're in agreement on UConn. UConn's just going to curb stomp their way to the Final Four.
Yeah.
2 more home games in Boston here. The South, I'm taking Duke. I like the momentum they're riding here. I think they're overdue to get a big win here. I don't trust Houston right now. I think A&M exposed some flaws in their game. I think they're going to lose that game, and Houston will beat Marquette. I mean, Duke will beat Marquette to get to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
The Midwest, I have Creighton prior to the tournament. I will stick with Creighton here. I think they got
Mm-hmm.
their knuckle out of the way against Oregon and survived. I don't think Purdue is going to be up to the challenge of closing out one of these big games. I think that's going to end up biting them in the butt. And
Mm-hmm.
in the West, Caleb Love revenge game, Arizona.
Oh, okay. Okay. Arizona, I don't know. I was down on them going into the NCAA tournament, and they've looked really good through 2 games. They get a I guess a little bit of a break in playing Clemson, and like you said, North Carolina, Alabama. Those are 2 teams that are vulnerable. North Carolina probably the most vulnerable of the 1 seeds, and then Alabama. Obviously, we've talked about their deficiencies as well. So yeah, if you're looking to take a shot in that region, Arizona is definitely the team to pick.
Yeah, plus I think nobody in that game is more excited to win than Caleb Love.
Exactly. Yeah. You know he's gonna have a good game in that spot.
Yeah, for sure. Troy, thanks for all the time. We appreciate it. We'll be back next week. We'll wrap up what we saw this weekend and get you ready for the Final Four.
Of course. Thanks, Mike.
If people want to follow me on social media, I'm going to do that.
I'm on Twitter at Troy Mauriello, Mauriello. If you're a St. John's fan, check out my musings with the St. John's Red Storm team. It's basically all I tweet about. So if you're a St. John's fan, definitely check it out.
I will say, keep an eye on Troy's Twitter if Cal does leave Kentucky here. Spicy there.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of panic tweets if Cal ends up leaving and we get some rumors about Rick. So hopefully we don't have to deal with that though.